Let's talk about anxiety, anxiety disorders, anxiety treatment, science, pseudoscience, misapplied science, overreaching science, overpromising science, and how when we put all of those things together, we have a recipe, if not for disaster, at least for possible disappointment that nobody really wants. So this week on the Anxious Truth podcast, we're going to be talking about how to be a little bit more of a critical consumer or a skeptical consumer of what is being portrayed to you as science-based or proved evidence-based treatments or hacks or neurohacks that will take away your anxiety and make you feel better instantly. Let's get to that right now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Anxious Truth. This is episode 334 of the podcast. We are recording in December of 2025 for those of you who are watching or listening from the future. This week, we are going to talk about the intersection of anxiety, anxiety disorders, anxiety treatment, and science. And I say that in air quotes, pseudoscience, overreaching or overpromising science that we find every day on the internet, in an environment where people who are struggling with anxiety can go online all day long and search for ways to feel better or ways to quickly feel better or cures. There is just an avalanche of information that all claims to be science or cloaks itself in the word science, or we'll say is evidence-based or science-based. And that isn't always true. In fact, it's quite often not true, or at least partially not true, and that matters. So yeah, we're going to talk about this week. I am Drew Linsalata. I am creator and host of the Anxious Truth podcast. I'm also a therapist that specializes in the treatment of anxiety and anxiety disorders, practicing in New York. I am a former sufferer of the very problems that we talk about here on the Anxious Truth, although that is the least important of my qualifications. I am also a four-time author on the topic of anxiety and anxiety recovery, social media guy, psychoeducator, advocate, you know the story. This week, we are going to talk with a friend of mine, somebody who I got connected with via Instagram this year, and I have come to know and trust. That is Dr. Birthe Macdonald. Dr. Macdonald is a research psychologist and a cognitive neuroscientist. So she spends her time in these topics, and she's a really great science communicator, science educator. And she is really spending most of her time these days helping people decipher evidence-based or science-based or science claims online, especially in the area of mental health, since that's sort of her bailiwick. I asked Birthe to come on. I trust her, by the way. She's a great ally. She's a very trustworthy source. She's not going to overreach. She's not going to give you garbage. So I asked her to come on and talk about this with us, and she was gracious enough to accept that offer. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes just chatting about a few different things. We're going to touch on polyvagal theory. We're going to touch on SPECT scans. We're going to touch on genetic testing for antidepressants, a few other topics, but just generally the idea is like, hey, be aware that not everything that you see is actually science. So yeah, let's get to that. But before we do, just a very fast reminder that there are way more resources than just this podcast episode or this YouTube video, depending on how you're consuming it. All of the other goodies, and I urge you to take advantage of those, are on my website at theanxioustruth.com. So take a minute, go check out what's there. There are books and workshops. Everything is very low cost or free. Most of it is in fact free. All the previous podcast episodes, links to my social media. So yeah, go check it out at theanxioustruth.com. People seem to find this stuff helpful. Hopefully you will too. Let us get Birthe on. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes about this, and I'll come back at the end and wrap it up. Here we go. All righty. As promised, I am joined from, where are you in the UK right now? Somewhere in Europe. Well,
I'm in Germany.
Oh, you're in Germany right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we could say Germany. It's a big place. They can't find you. My friend Birthe, Dr. Birthe Macdonald. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself so you guys know what her background is, but know ahead of time that this is a person that I have come to know because of our connection on social media, and I trust what she says. This is not garbage. Birthe is not a snake oil salesperson. As a matter of fact, she is combating that in a really great way. So Birthe, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I am a psychologist and cognitive neuroscientist by training. I'm a researcher, so I'm a scientist, not a therapist. And I've spent about 15 years now researching the human mind and brain. I focused on emotion regulation kind of in the early part of my career. And then more recently, I've been focusing more on kind of social psychology, social interaction. So I'm very mental health adjacent in my research. And on social media, I'm doing science communication, mostly on emotions and mental health.
Okay, I love it. You are a fan of the theory of constructed emotions, I know.
Huge fan.
Yeah, me too. So this is kind of a cool discussion, I think, because we have application and research in the same room. Like, Birthe is honest. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a researcher nor a scientist. I'm a therapist. So together, maybe we can help you navigate some of this stuff. Also, Birthe was on episode 124 of Disordered. So if you guys listen to Disordered and you like what you hear today, go pop on over there and listen to episode 124 because that was really fun to record with the three of us. So let's talk a little bit. There were a couple of, like I said in the intro, I was super triggered into like, I just want to burn the internet down when we released the new book on health anxiety, which I'm not trying to sell today. I'm not even going to plug it. Like, and I saw all the vagus nerve books in the category. Yeah. Books that might help me with health anxiety. And it was riddled with vagus nerve books, like absolutely riddled. And the covers of the books, and I know you talk probably too much about polyvagal theory. I'll let you off the hook so you don't have to go into it. But the covers and the titles of the book, these are all hack books. You know, these are the vagus nerve way to fix anything. Your car is burning oil, your electric bill is too high, you're too anxious, you're depressed, whatever. ADHD. I'm gonna fix it with the vagus nerve. Buy this book.
The vagus nerve fixes everything.
It does. Clearly, it's connected to everything.
Well, it is connected to everything. I mean, that's not wrong. It's connected. It's connected to the brain, and it's connected to the gut. You know, to a lot of our internal organs. But the connection is kind of where it ends in terms of what we know. You know, there's no information processing going on in the vagus nerve.
That's true. It carries signals.
It transfers signals. It's basically like an electrical wire, isn't it? So your brain says something, it transfers the signals to your organs, and then your organs give feedback, and then it creates a continuous loop of your brain kind of making your body function the way it should, or it thinks it should.
Yeah, your brain actually making your body. Who saw that coming? No.
I don't know.
It's so interesting, and we won't spend too much time on polyvagal theory. I'm not a fan, although we'll talk a little bit about it. There are certainly reasonable applications. It's a great framework that people find explanatory and takes away sort of like the what's wrong with me and shifts us to what happened to me, which is really great. But one of the interesting things that I want to talk about today is, but it looks like fact. So for people who are suffering, in my audience, anxiety and anxiety disorders, it looks like fact. Like this is true. This is a scientific thing that has been proven, but it isn't. And the guy that we talked about this on Disordered when you were on with me and Josh, but the guy who created polyvagal theory essentially at one point backed up and said, no, this isn't meant to be proven or disproven, which he literally said that in the face of criticism, which means it is not science. By definition, that is not, if it is not disprovable, then this is not a scientific anything. It's just an idea.
That's right.
Yeah, the basic premise underneath that have been basically attacked by evolutionary and phytogenic models and anatomical incorrectness. Like his basic assumption is that there's been this divergence in the vagus nerve that us higher mammals got, and everybody's like, no, dude, where'd you get that? So there's just so many things underneath that say there's nothing to do with it. He relies on the respiratory sinus arrhythmia thing, and everybody has attacked that. Like, no, that has nothing to do with this. Don't say that and say that it proves your thing. But yet it looks like fact. Why does it look like fact?
Well, they still publish papers in scientific journals. I think he just recently published it was a review paper. So it's not a scientific study. But there are scientific studies in air quotes published in the name of polyvagal theory as well, using RSA as an outcome measure, for example, and that looks really scientific, right? If you kind of just read it on the surface level, then that looks really scientific. But if the underlying assumption that RSA is a measure of vagus nerve activity and vagus nerve activity alone, if that doesn't hold, then it's not a valid conclusion to say this is evidence for polyvagal theory.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a framing issue.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like the RSA thing, and we won't get too nerdy, but honestly, we probably do need to get nerdy because I think part of the problem is when you're consuming this type of information and polyvagal theory that fixes anxiety, like I'm going to do vagal tone exercises and activate my vagus nerve and I'm going to feel better. It looks like fact because you hear stuff like this. But really, for instance, the RSA thing is no, the rest of science and the rest of research said, no. There's like multiple variables there. This is not just vagus nerve connected. So it's incorrect to connect these two things and say, see, this proves this.
Exactly.
No. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, what I always find interesting about it as well is that even if RSA was a vagus nerve indicator, I don't really know how much that tells us about the assumed vagus nerve branches either, and we don't have
Yeah.
basically just the underlying assumption hasn't really been shown to be accurate. In fact, it's been shown to not be accurate,
Yeah.
and still the framework continues. And I mean, what fascinates me about it is also that what they suggest has very little to do with the underlying framework, the anatomy, and what is suggested in there is, I don't think any of it is particularly exclusive to polyvagal theory. So that's where it falls apart for me
Yeah. Me too.
as
There's
a
so much.
psychoeducation tool.
Yeah, I agree. And even as a therapy tool. And when we talk about stuff like this, a lot of people get really upset. Like, hey, don't be attacking my polyvagal theory. I love it. I'm emotionally attached to it. Okay. And in theory and in application, we see a lot of somatic work and body movement. And this is how you activate and tone your vagus nerve. And the interventions have been around long before Stephen Porges ever put forth polyvagal theory, and they have reasonable outcomes. Like we would use them, I would use them. I just would never promise a therapy client, if you do this humming or deep breathing or cold plunge or yoga intervention that I've designed for you, it will activate or tone your nervous system, which will turn off your anxiety. That is not correct. You are being sold a bill of goods then. These are great interventions people have been using for decades and decades before this theory ever existed, but somehow the theory has been glued to them, and it's like, oh, yoga is a vagal nerve intervention. Well, maybe, but it always has been before the theory ever existed. So it's really you know.
Well, I think it's probably the underlying mechanism that is just not as suggested, right? We've got,
Right.
sure, like if you do something to relax, then your vagus nerve will become more active, but that doesn't mean that you've stimulated your vagus nerve. This term stimulation suggests that there's some kind of mechanical
Mhm.
fail-safe process going on that is like you said, a hack, a neurohack.
Right.
Um, but that's probably not the case. So you're probably just practicing focusing your attention on something other than what's maintaining your anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, that's great practice. I mean, you're the
Oh, that's
therapist. It's all about like detaching from your
yeah.
thoughts and not giving them so much attention. But it's
Yeah,
it's just
100%.
it's not a physical mechanical hacky thing. It's just practicing focus from my
Yeah.
point of view.
All else being equal, I agree. As the application in the room, I agree 100%. But we have to frame that really carefully. Like, this is one of multiple things that you should probably be working on. But if you view it through the lens of, the vagus nerve and polyvagal theory, you could see it as, if I hum and do, put my face in cold water, then I somehow mechanically or electrically change the way my vagus nerve works, and it fixes this problem that I have. But that's
Yeah.
not correct. Like, these interventions that are vagus nerve based, and if you want to think of them that way, knock yourself out. But they are one of many things that we would combine together. And over time, you would have experiences that would teach you that you do not have to fear your own body and mind.
Yeah, but I think I would say that it's an issue if you think that's. I think you shouldn't be attached to that being a vagus nerve exercise, because um, that kind of creates reliance on them, and also it creates this consequence the other way around. What's the word for that, Drew?
Well, so if
Like
you're,
the reverse isn't true, that the vagus nerve then was the problem.
oh,
And I
right.
think that's the messaging that is problematic, that often it comes across like, oh, you're anxious because your vagus nerve isn't doing what it should. But
That's
that's
the
not that's not accurate. Your vagus nerve
after.
is doing what it should, but your brain's not giving it the information,
Yeah.
you
No, I get
know.
it. Would that be, what is that? Ergo propter, that after, therefore, before. So
Yeah, but
I
that's
do
not
a
the word I'm
vagus.
looking for.
Yeah, I do a vagus nerve exercise, and then things change. So therefore, it must be because I worked on my vagus nerve. That's not correct. It's
Exactly.
part of it. Yeah, part of the sequence. So you know what? I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't tie it to, like, well, no, it's a vagus nerve. I work on my vagus nerve and then I get better. Because then
Yeah.
it also, and then we'll move on. I promise we're not going to like pick on polyvagal theory the whole time, but
That's fine.
it also leads to conditional okayness. Like, did I learn to be better at handling my internal states? Or do I just think that I learned how to somehow magically activate this nerve and tone it up? And then I'm
Exactly.
okay as long as I do that. As long as I maintain my vagal tone, I'm going to be okay. No, you didn't never needed to do that. It's going to work no
But
matter what you do.
and that's why these neurohack things are so alluring, isn't it? Because it depersonalizes the issue. It makes it not your problem. It makes it a physiological thing. It's not you, it's just your vagus nerve that's the problem. But then when you say you fixed it by toning your vagus nerve, and I put that in air quotes for the
Yeah.
people who are just listening, then it also says that it wasn't actually you who overcame that. You just fixed your vagus nerve. So it all kind of becomes very mechanical that way. And I think that's, I don't know if that's particularly a helpful attitude for a client to have when they overcome anxiety, or they get better, or they learn to live with their thoughts and sensations a bit better. Then
Mhm.
it would probably help to take credit for that, right? And
Oh,
not just
yeah.
say, I
Yeah.
just fixed my vagus nerve.
100%. I learned that I can handle this experience and therefore it tends to decrease in intensity. That's really
Yeah,
the mechanism at play.
yeah.
What you're
Because
saying
then
makes
next time it happens, next time it's uncomfortable, you'll
right.
probably just say, "Oh shit, sorry, my
Okay.
vagus nerve is not working. My vagus nerve is not working anymore. I have to start again." And instead,
Right.
you could just say, "Oh, I feel uncomfortable, but maybe that doesn't tell me anything about the situation that I'm in."
Yeah, and I've encountered people. Now, there's two sides to that story, and I appreciate what you're saying. On the flip side, a lot of people who will defend, and we're talking about vagus nerve work here, but people who defend that will say, but it's the framework. And when you say it's not you, it's your vagus nerve, that's problematic. But on the flip side, it also can be helpful because, that especially in the trauma world, like the trauma narrative has shifted, luckily for us, over the past 25 years from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And
Mhm.
this helps. People will often feel like there's something seriously wrong with me. I am broken. I am defective. I am too weak. Something is going on here. Why do I keep reacting to the world this way? People will say, but polyvagal theory is such a great framework because it says there's nothing, you're not broken. But then it goes off the rails by saying the problem is your nervous system is broken. Well, the problem is you've had experiences that mean that you're on a hair trigger. So it's true, your nervous system is part of that, but it takes the fault or the stigma away, which is great. But we can't put it all on neurobiology. That's not correct.
I think there are better ways of doing that, and there are better ways of telling people that there's nothing wrong, that
Yeah,
they're not wrong.
yeah, I
You know,
agree.
it's not their fault. It's what happened to them, or whatever
Well, yeah,
is
I think
doing
what
what it should.
happened to what happened to you? I think is a great. That's a better framework than like let's talk
Yeah.
about your vagus nerve and
Well,
why.
yeah, exactly. I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. What happened to you and what these experiences taught you, and they become part of your predictive model. If we want to talk about constructed emotions and that sort of stuff, like that's much more plausible and workable. I've
Yeah.
also run into people, and then we'll move off of polyvagal. We're going to move to a few other things here, but I've run into people who are swear by it is the vagus nerve. But then if they get a little bit overwhelmed in a setting where they can't instantly do their vagus nerve intervention, they tend to experience a real backslide because they try. I can't tell you the number of people I found that will jump up in the middle of a family dinner and run to the bathroom and try to get the coldest water they can out of the tap so they could dunk their face in it because they need to activate their vagus nerve. Now, that can be a DBT type intervention for emotional regulation that helps with that. That's true, but they miss it then and they think that they're turning on a nerve. So there's just a lot of problems. Don't be, I think the bottom line here is don't be fooled into grasping at that because it's science and it is a hack that fixes things. That would not be accurate or correct.
Yeah. I think there are better ways to educate people about how their brain works, more accurate ways.
Probably right.
And predictive processing and the theory of constructed emotion are much more flexible
100%.
ways of doing that.
And I think much more descriptive. If I mean, listen, you're the researcher here, but like first and foremost, science wants to give us, explanations for what we see. Does this match what we see? Yeah, it kind of does. So, like, just because the fact that nerve is in fact carrying signals as part of emotions and experiences being constructed doesn't mean it's the cause of it. It's just part of the bigger system. Speaking of how your brain works, let's talk about pretty pictures of the brain, which is another
Pretty
thing
pictures of the brain.
pretty
Yeah.
like cool, like, oh, look at those multicolored scans of the it was just in the news not too long ago. I
Yeah.
don't know if I really want to get into the garbage, but a very well-known celebrity was scanned by a very well-known mental health celebrity who is heavily invested in these brain scans, who said, well, she's has low brain activity in certain areas. And that prompted a whole other discussion of the whole SPECT scans and what
Yes.
they mean. What have you looked into this stuff? Dr. Amen and his SPECT scans?
Yeah, of course I have. I mean, whenever something like that pops up, and Dr. Amen, he's not new to the whole scene,
No.
and I've criticized him before.
He's very savvy. I'll give him that
He
from
is
a business
extremely
standpoint.
savvy, and
Very
he's very convincing.
He
You
is.
know,
Yeah. I,
um,
I have over 90 studies, he'll say, on camera.
yeah, he will say that. I haven't verified that. I don't know.
Oh,
I've
I
seen
have tried to
videos.
verify that. He doesn't. That's
He doesn't.
their
Okay.
pre-publications or reviews, their opinions. He's an
Okay.
aesthetic. Anyway,
Interesting, isn't it?
yeah,
Interesting. He doesn't publish his data apparently.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I didn't know much about SPECT scanning because it's not really a method that is used particularly for research. It doesn't have particularly high spatial resolution, so it's not super useful
yeah. Mm,
for imaging, functional imaging.
right.
Um, that means that basically we can see. Okay, so
All right.
spatial resolution is like how much detail we can see on the brain,
Right.
basically. So I can't remember now what SPECT was, but it wasn't particularly detailed. And if you think about how many neurons there are in the brain, you kind of want as much detail as you can get.
Sure.
And I think it's also quite a slow method. So
And expensive. Those scans
it
can
is,
be
yeah, it is
thousands of
expensive.
dollars.
Yeah, but then all imaging is expensive, so I'm not really sure that.
That's true. That's true. Well, you know what? That's 100% true. Imaging is very expensive. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about that. So that's not his fault that it
no,
costs money.
that's not his fault.
Yeah, I get that. But there was some of the interesting things that I have seen about, and again, in the context of people who are struggling, because he will come out and say, I have this thing and I put you through this $4,000 scan and it gives me pictures of your brain. And then I know exactly how to fix your mental health problem.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that
And
is a
that's the
problem.
problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And when challenged, he will. Okay, and it's going to look like science because it's Dr. Amen. I get that, and he's been around for 30 years doing
And
this.
he
So
is a psychiatrist as
he
well.
is 100%. Well, but I know we have talked about this. I've talked about it with Anna Lund over on Substack. Like, yeah, a lot of people with really good, solid backgrounds that tend to get lured over to the dark side. So I hear you, but it looks like, well, this is science. This is a doctor with proof. It's science. Like 40,000 scans or whatever they say they've done in the Amen clinics, like proves that this is actually a thing. He knows how to fix based on the colors that the scan shows in my brain. But when pressed on that, he will often retreat to, no, that's not, well, where are your controlled studies? And he'll say, well, that's not how we validate diagnostic tools. And he's right. But a diagnostic tool is not an intervention tool. So which one is it?
No.
Like, yeah. And even
Yeah,
then, there's a lot of questions
it's kind
about
of,
like, is it even diagnostic?
well, that's the first question. It's kind of convoluted, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
he makes a lot of claims based on those scans, and makes a lot of diagnoses and is talking about kind of personalized medicine approaches to psychiatry. And his tagline is something along the lines of, if you don't know, if you don't look. So he says we should be scanning brains to know what's going on in people's heads. And one day in the future, that would be great,
Yeah.
because we all know that mental health disorders are so varied and people have all sorts of different symptoms and still come under the same umbrella of anxiety or depression or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's also exactly the problem with why we can't diagnose mental health disorders with brain scans, because they are so varied. Lots of people can have lots of different symptoms with lots of different intensities.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the power to detect that in brain scans, because there is so much individual difference in healthy brain activity. Lots of different brains can do lots of different things and come to similar, perfectly healthy behaviors, feelings, attitudes. that we just don't know what the, in air quotes, normal baseline is. So we can't compare one depressed person's or one anxious person's scan to a verified control and conclude what their issue is and what they need treatment for and which treatment they need. And that's a huge issue. There are steps being taken at the moment with disorders. I think there was a paper fairly recently this year at some point on 6 different types of depression, and they were looking at connectivity.
I saw that.
And saying that they could, and this is the problem with kind of science language and colloquial language, because they were saying they could predict what kind of depression people had based on their functional connectivity, but that's still a group level analysis, right? We're not predicting on an individual person, we're still predicting on group means. And that means probably not a single person in those 6 types of depression groups had exactly that pattern of activation. So you wouldn't be able to pick one out and say, okay, we're going to scan you, and if you show that pattern of activation, then we know this treatment will work for you. This is still group level analysis, and that's because there's so much. There are so many individual differences between people in what our brains are doing, because our brains are so plastic and adaptable that they can get to the same outcome in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, that's true, which is that's in the constructed emotions framework too. Like the, that grouping of brain areas and neurons that like actually, we can have 50 different ways to get to the same place.
Yeah.
And there's the, like in a cardiologist will tell you like, hey, well, your stress test today does not show us any sign that you have had a previous, say, MI, myocardial infarction. But like, I can't guarantee you that this means that there's definitely nothing wrong. We can only say that today you appear to be okay. Things are good. And I've heard this criticism on brain scans too, whether it's SPECT and Dr. Amen or other places, that is a snapshot today of what your brain is looking like today. When we put you through this silly sequence of tests that they try to use to activate. Okay, tomorrow you might look very different. And we don't seem to have where like, hey, come back for 30 days in a row and let's see if there's any sort of pattern in this. We don't do that because it's really expensive. So kind of tough. One of the interesting, but again, it will look like science. And this, I've seen this also happen with like, and I don't know if this is a thing that you've ever looked into, but that genetic testing for which antidepressant is the one that will work for you. And my practice is full of people who've been through that test who are on their 3rd and 4th antidepressant when the test flat out said like, this is the one, your genes say this one works for you. And I think maybe what we're looking at here is, like you said, maybe sometime in the future, brain scanning will be able to be used as a good diagnostic tool with reliability, but not today, but we jump ahead.
Yeah.
Why does it look like science? I suspect, and I'm interested in your opinion here, back in the day, Dr. Amen is not new. He has been around for a very long time. You would only see him here in the US. We have the public broadcasting system of the public TV. His specials and stuff would be on PBS during their pledge drives. You never saw him anywhere. Once in a long while, you might see him because we have very limited media outlets. And now with the advent of anyone with a webcam and a microphone can say stuff, holy mackerel, now I can put this in front of a huge audience. And I think we then jumped the gun and like, if I just make a leap, maybe 40 years down the road and say that we know that now, I can sell this. This is a moneymaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't even, with Dr. Amen, I think he really does believe in it. I mean, I listened to that interview on Dr. Mike's podcast, I think that you were referring to as well. Dr. Mike recently had him on his podcast.
Oh, I like that guy.
Yeah, me too. It was great. Yeah. And I was actually surprised. I did agree with Dr. Amen on a few things, but then not the brain imaging thing. But I think he really does believe in it. I don't think it's a snake oil sales pitch necessarily. I think he really does believe that what he's doing is necessary. And anecdotally, he says he's helped, I don't know, thousands of people. But yeah, it's still anecdotes if he can't publish his data, and it's very selective sampling, and this whole as you say, as we know, psychoeducation is huge for a lot of people with mental health disorders. You know, just there's it's not, you're not wrong
Right.
for feeling the way you do. There's a reason that you feel the way you do, and if he can make a pretty brain picture and say, look, here's the reason, then immediately a lot of people are going to feel a lot of relief.
Yeah, I hear you. It does make sense. I think I'm with you when you say, and I've never talked to the man, I'm never going to talk to him, but like, I think he believes what he's saying too. But I think part of also why things that aren't science look so readily like science is the confidence with which they are portrayed, right? People
Yes.
with credentials and confident voices who may truly believe that what they're saying is correct, probably doesn't think he's doing anybody any harm, and that's fine. But I think part of it too is we are so immersed, especially in the last 5 or 10 years, in it's more about identity than it is science. I'm a little bit off the rails here, but no, no, no. They laughed at Galileo too. So like you can
Yeah.
push back on me, but I genuinely believe that I am a maverick that is
Yes.
blazing new trails. And if I'm going to break a few eggs as to move the human race forward, then I'm just going to have to do that. But
Yeah.
don't criticize me because you don't even understand my genius yet. One day
Yeah.
they will look back and know who I was. And we encourage that so much that the science that we see so much, especially with people who are suffering and looking for that science, air quotes, sounds so convincing and so
Yes.
confident. Yeah. Yeah. The
People
fact
should
that,
be.
well,
Sorry.
sometimes it's a selling point, I find, and I think this is right up your alley. Well, you might say, as a researcher and a scientist, yeah, but we've studied that and we don't really have any proof of that. In fact, or we've actually disproved it. It appears that it's not true. Yeah, I know that's exactly what they want you to think. So that identity thing, it actually becomes a feature that science hasn't supported it if you're driven by identity, which is like, no, 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 I don't listen to those sheep. I go my own way. So
Mm.
don't tell me that's been disproven. That I know that's exactly what you want me to think. I'm too brave to buy into your science craziness, Dr.
Yes.
McDonald. Yeah,
Wouldn't it be great if everyone who said that about themselves was right eventually?
it would be. Well, you know what? Some are. I mean, they did laugh at Isaac Newton. They did laugh at Galileo. Like
Mm.
Einstein couldn't get a job. So, it is true, but not likely that we have this many like
Well, this is exactly the point.
emerging geniuses at the same point in time.
This is exactly the point. And
Yeah.
I think what I was going to say a minute ago, people should probably be most skeptical of those who sound the most confident and claim to be scientific, because it is so difficult to do good science in psychology and cognitive neuroscience. It's very hard. And
Hmm.
um, and you have to qualify what you're saying. Sorry, I've got a visitor.
Guest appearance by the cat. Hi, cat.
You have to qualify what you're saying. If you're a good scientist, you will always say, this is true if and when these conditions are met, and not this is universally always true and I know and no one else does. You should be trying to disprove yourself if you're a good scientist.
Yeah, it's a good
And there
point.
should be a lot of coulds and mights and
Yeah.
potentialities.
There's a parallel there too, and we'll kind of wrap it up. The point would be like, be skeptical. We could do another episode on like, well, how to be skeptical. Well,
Yeah.
you may have to learn how to read papers a little bit. I don't say you have to go and read every paper written about every treatment you choose, but maybe we got to do that. But there's a parallel. Good science is humble and recognizes that it might be wrong by default.
Yeah.
And I think good therapy and good interventions also, I have an ethical obligation to let you know that this might not work. In fact,
Yes.
it might actually make you feel worse. And
Yeah.
for people like me who are exposure and acceptance based, I can tell you flat out, you will feel bad doing this work. So
Yeah.
be careful when you find like, well, this science is 100% true. And we know it because real science is trying to suppress it. So this is proof that we're true ahead of our
Yeah.
time. Or any intervention that guarantees this is the thing. If you buy my box set on how to cure your OCD, this will do it. I had a guy pitching me to be on this podcast that swears that he developed a 4-second technique to end health anxiety.
Oh.
Really? Have you? So like nobody could promise that, but be careful of promises in science and in treatment.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good informed consent to say, these are the options and this is what they might do and this is why it might work, and this is why it might not work for you, and this is what
Yeah.
we do if, and so on and so on.
Right. Exactly.
That's true informed consent, isn't it? Informed consent is not do this because it's going to work.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that maybe we'll wrap it up with, the way research papers are written, and you've read and written more than I ever will in my lifetime, I'm sure. But like the part where like, hey, here, these could be the problems with this should be at the top. They never are. It's at the bottom. So people can jump right ahead to the abstract is at the top, and that lends itself to like, that's good news headlines. That's good,
Yeah.
reels and shorts. And
Yes.
like, go to the bottom of the paper, like, and see the part where they say, this wasn't so good in this study. We got to improve that the next go around.
Yes. Yes, that's right. I love the analogy of the abstract is the real of the
Yeah,
paper.
100%.
That's exactly what it is. And the problem is that people often only read the abstract, and the abstract does not have the information that you want.
Yeah.
The abstract without the method is nothing. And if you don't understand the method, then you still can't understand the abstract correctly. It's hard. Reading papers is hard.
And boring. And that's why not a lot of people do it.
Well, that's a matter of
Fair enough.
perspective.
You know what? I spent a lot of years reading papers and that I think are fascinating. You probably, like I said, you read way more than I do, I'm sure, because it's the profession you've chosen. But keep in mind, last little bit that I'll throw out there, because you might not understand what's in the paper, which I don't understand most of what's written in the scientific world because I don't know shit about physics and like chemistry. So I wouldn't know what I'm looking at either. That doesn't automatically make it dangerous. I know I'm a little bit on a soapbox here, but if I look at something that I don't understand, and there's a group of people over there that have dedicated their lives to understanding that, it doesn't automatically mean that I'm being played, fooled, or taken for a ride. I have
No.
to accept that I do not know what I do not know. And Birthe, you know things that I don't know, and hopefully I know things that you don't know. I'm not sure if that's true.
Plenty.
And
Plenty,
together,
absolutely.
like we pool our resources, and that's how humans do things. So
Yeah.
just be skeptical. Maybe we'll come back and do another episode on how to be skeptical. I don't know.
Well, let me just, if I may, just quickly plug my journal club.
Yeah, let's do it. I love it. Oh, good. That's a great way to be skeptical. I love this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've started a journal club, and basically anyone can join.
Yeah.
And we read and discuss a paper every month, and it's really great fun. And it's a way for people who aren't used to reading papers to learn to read and understand papers. Kind of low level. And it makes them a bit more competent in being able to judge the abstract, I guess.
You know what? That is a great first stop. I've seen you talking about it on social media, and I love like you will ask people, what should we read this month or this week? And
Yeah.
people will, hey, let's read a paper about, which is really
Yes.
awesome. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a collaborative effort. If people have a topic that they want to read about, or a paper that they're curious about, or anything like that, then I'm very happy to accommodate that, and I can lend my expertise in figuring out the findings.
love it.
And, it's kind of learning by doing, because we've had one session so far. The next one's on Saturday. Well, by the time this comes out, it will be done. But I, but we've read that great swearing paper where people were asked to put their hand in cold water and then either to swear or not to swear, and that was great fun. And figured out some stuff about that. And next, we're going to read that classic PTSD paper, the Roach et al. That our friend Bessel van der Kolk references in his book. So we're going to talk about that paper, because that's quite a landmark paper in PTSD and imaging research. So it's all about what people are interested in, what they want to read about, and then I will facilitate the understanding. And I think it's brilliant fun. I love doing that.
Yeah, I love it. I'm sorry I missed the swear paper. Damn, I should have gotten in on that one. Maybe I learned something about myself. I don't know.
It's a great paper. It's actually a really good paper, really well controlled little study.
I love it. If you guys are, whether you're on YouTube or watching, you're listening as a podcast, I'll put a link to that, all this stuff in the show notes and the description, everything. So that was really great. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, it's always good fun. All right, we'll do it again sometime. So I'll come back in a minute to wrap it up. I'll give you links and all that stuff. So thank you, Birthe. Okay, we are back. Thank you so much to my friend, Dr. Birthe Macdonald, for coming on and spending as much time as she did with us today. I always like talking to her. She's funny and she's accurate and she's a really good skeptic, which is what we need. We need skepticism. We need the scientific method more than ever. And Birthe is just a great representative of that entire sort of ethos. So I appreciate her. Thanks to her for coming on and talking to us. If you would like to find Birthe online, I will link her Instagram and her website either in the YouTube video description or the show notes of this podcast. If you're on a podcast app, if you're on my website, it'll be on the page for this episode. Which will be theanxioustruth.com/334. We'll have all of the links and go check her out. If nothing else, follow her on Instagram because that's all free stuff and she's publishing all the time and she's just a really great resource. She'll teach you how to read papers and things of that nature, which is a good thing. So what I want to talk about today really quickly before I sign off is that, just full disclosure, while we didn't really talk about it, what sparked this was that Josh Fletcher and I, we do the Disordered podcast together on every Friday. We just released a book called The Disordered Guide to Health Anxiety. And when I was on Amazon seeing what the book was doing, I noticed that in the category of health anxiety, there was just a zillion books with the word vagus nerve in the title. So while I did not ask Birthe on to, tell you to not buy those books and buy ours, I don't care. Buy whatever book you want. I always like to be really transparent. That is in fact what sparked this discussion. So take it for what it's worth, right? I will always tell you guys that you should be skeptical of everything that you consume online, including me. And that's why I want to be really transparent about that. Don't be fooled because somebody has a big voice or an expensive microphone or broad shoulders or a beard or seems likable or you think you know or trust. Those could be traps. Always be skeptical. And when somebody says this is science or this is evidence-based, question that. Go check it out for yourself. So I think it's really important to do that because we have to be critical, skeptical consumers of the information that we use to make decisions about our well-being and our mental health. It's never a bad thing to learn how to do that, right? And to go into with take everything with a grain of salt because we're not really sure what we're being sold today on the internet. And while I do totally understand why you may be out there frantically searching for this sort of stuff because you just want to feel better, and I want you to feel better too, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel better, that vulnerability or even in some cases desperation can lead us to be maybe a little less critical. So just try to keep that in mind. Anyway, the other thing that I want to say, excuse me, the other thing I really want to say before I sign off is if you find something, and this goes true for whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening as a podcast episode or you're a therapy client of mine, if you find a thing that I might not necessarily agree with, but you are finding it helpful, it fits into your lifestyle, it fits into your belief system, it is helping you feel better, it is helping you learn and grow and adapt and all of those things, don't let me or Birthe or anybody else take it away from you. Like even in therapy, I have clients who maybe are involved in things that I don't necessarily agree with, but they find strength, comfort, or help in that. And I am not going to take that away. I'm going to work with that. So if any of the things that we talked about today, you like or find helpful, by all means, keep going toward them. We're not here to tell you not to do that. It's totally fine. If you find that you're getting good results with something, anything, and it's not hurting you, then keep going with that. I support your right to do that. And I support your choice to do that. So not a lot of real recovery lessons today for the most part, just maybe a little bit of an encouragement to be a little more skeptical about the information we consume online, especially when the word science or evidence is involved. Hopefully you got something out of this. As we wrap up, I'll just ask you a favor. And by the way, this is the last podcast episode of 2025. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening this year, for watching along on YouTube this year, for following along on social media. This is just so much fun. I really love doing it. It's been a great year. 2026 hopefully will be even better. Thank you for following along on the Disordered podcast, which is at disordered.fm. Josh and I appreciate that too. And if you do like the podcast and you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Most of you are not subscribed, and it tells YouTube that you like these videos, or hit the like button. Maybe takes just a click for you, means a lot to me, so that YouTube understands that hey, we like this guy making videos. Otherwise they just sort of bury people like me, and that's okay. I'm going to keep making them anyway. But and of course, if you're listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or some platform that lets you rate a review, if you like The Anxious Truth, leave a 5-star review. And if you really like it, maybe take a second and write a review, maybe a paragraph or two that says why you like the podcast. It helps other people find it in the search engine on those platforms, and then other people maybe get some extra help, which is why I do this to begin with. Thank you so much for hanging out this week. I am back again in 2 weeks with another topic. Don't know what it's going to be, but I will be here. Take care of yourself. Keep doing the best you can. Every little change matters. See you next time.